Welcome to another episode of The Death of Art. We're at Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn, New York, which is the entrance to Prospect Park. It's a National Historic Landmark and one of the most amazing sites, historic sites, filled with art going back over 100 years, and it's a wonderful thing to see. This is Bailey Fountain, but it wasn't always here. In 1897, this was a completely different fountain, also loosely referred to as Bailey Fountain. It was called the Electric Fountain. This was a dome-like structure. It had a pool around it, and it had massive banks of arc lights. It would shine through the water, light up the spray and the mists of the fountain, and it was such a sensation that opening night in 1897 actually brought out 100,000 people. This was the Electric Light Rock Show of 1897. This version of the Bailey Fountain, completed in 1932, is a wonderful piece of fantastical art. You have all of these little fantastical creatures woven in and out of it. On top, you actually have a man and a woman, back to back. Weaving between their groin areas is a cornucopia, and a child supporting the cornucopia. And interestingly enough, as a nod to the times, you have the woman wearing this flapper cap. It was a fashion that came in and out in a decade, but this thing being designed in the late 1920s, completed in about 1932, reflects the aesthetic of that time. And as if we haven't had enough death, here is a bust of John F. Kennedy, murdered on November 22nd, 1963. This was dedicated on my birthday many years ago, and then oddly enough rededicated in 2010. Behind me, we have the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Arch. It's a memorial to all the fallen soldiers and sailors from the Civil War. The funny thing about this arch, it's clearly a triumphal arch. Harks right back to the grand days of Rome when they'd have these huge triumphs. They'd have slaves and sacrifices rolled in. This is exactly that iconography. If you look at it carefully, it is actually not even mentioning the soldiers and sailors. It is celebrating the defeat of the Northern Union forces over the Southern rebels. Let's take a walk and take a closer look. Clearly, they made a triumphal arch. Then at one point or another, somebody said, you know, 750,000 people died in the Civil War. We should not be celebrating this. So why don't we just rename it as something else? And here we have this memorial to soldiers and sailors, which is nowhere represented on the arch. Over here, we have Lincoln. He is on a horse that's kind of drooping. He has his hat off, therefore he is doffing his hat to the populace. He is simply dressed, and he's sort of slouched like an everyday guy. One of the reasons he was represented as such is because he was considered in the late 19th century as a tyrant by at least half the country, that is to say, the half that's below the Mason-Dixon line. The other half of the country saw him either as a hero or a tyrant. There were many mixed feelings even in the North. So they wanted to represent him as just a regular guy, a regular American in our egalitarian society. On this side, we have an image of General Grant, also on a horse. He is again simply dressed in a basic army uniform. It belies the horrific war criminal that he actually was. It's always a big red flag when you walk up to a piece of public art and it is seriously fenced off like you see here. This is a replica of a sculpture which has been recently dedicated in St. Peter's Plaza in Rome and is traveling the world today. It is a tribute to the refugees of all times, all eras, and there's many different ethnicities and times portrayed on this art. And this is actually supposed to be a raft, but the shape is clearly of an ark. And I find that even a little more offensive because we all know what the ark and the Bible carry, not refugees. I should mention that across from the triumphal arch, there are 4 large columns framing the entrance to Prospect Park, which they are the absolute quintessential expression of Empire art. Here you have 4 balls topped by 4 bald eagles. Clearly, it's stating their intentions. These eagles are sitting on globes, the world. This is the intention of the American Empire to take over the world, stated in very clear imagery.
4 times.
4 times. I just noticed some details. These little eagles on these columns are the exact symbolic language that Nazi Germany used throughout their massive 12-year building career. This beautiful entrance to Prospect Park was designed by arguably one of the greatest landscape designers that ever lived, Olmsted. Later, in the 20s, as the technology of travel changed, this became one of the most dangerous places to either walk, drive, or ride. In fact, the death toll got so high that the city installed something called a deathometer. It was a sign with changing numbers admonishing people to slow down. You saw it here first on The Death of Art. We just walked a few feet into Prospect Park to see a beautiful little restoration. In the 19th century, a lot of public work was actually done in wood. Most of it has rotted out, never to be seen again. Also, acoustics were a big part of architecture in those days. Oftentimes, streets were lined with wood to quiet the street against the horses clip-clopping and so forth. Here we have an example of a tunnel, which are usually rather echoey. This was trimmed out in wood. Amazingly, this wood has survived, and they restored it recently. One thing I want to point out is this incredible use of technology in stone that they use throughout this park. Much of it has gone away. These stripes here were actually almost entirely black and white. In those days, they had all these systems of treating stone, which we've either lost or just cannot do in a restoration. The effect is really quite amazing. It's almost modernistic, but almost Atlantean in a weird way, with these altering colors of darks and lights. This part, they say that they wanted to leave the original brickwork and stone, which wasn't part of the original design. My instinct is that the project just ran out of money and they said, well, you know, let's just tell them this, because I mean, this isn't much to see. Here you have it, Grand Army Plaza, surrounded by cops. Life is great. Please like, please subscribe, and please ring the bell.